Good morning, Highlands, Presbyterian. And today, we're a couple days past Epiphany, but today we're focused on Epiphany, the journey of the wise men that is portrayed in Matthew 2, verses 1 through 12. Now, you may have been wondering last week why the email with the sermon in it came out Friday night rather than on Sunday. Well, let me explain why. Now, several days before we celebrated the birth of Jesus of Bethlehem in Judea, a wise man from the south emailed me in Columbus saying, "We happen to have a couple extra tickets to the Peach Bowl. Would you be interested?" When Rachel heard this, she said to me, "Go and cheer diligently for the Buckeyes. And when they have won, bring me word that I, too, may celebrate." After listening to my wife, I went on my way, and behold, the tickets that I had been emailed brought me to a place where the game was. When I saw the stadium, I rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. Going into the stadium, I saw the team with Ryan Day, their coach, and I yelled in support, offering my hopes. And after watching that fateful kick wobble left of the upright, I departed to my city in another mood. Journeys are hard. Right? No matter where you are going, it's always easier to stay home. When planes are crowded in the holiday season, an already challenging journey can be made so much more difficult. Look at the chaos of Southwest Airlines over Christmas. All of us have stories of travel difficulties. My mom was going to come up from Cincinnati and spend Christmas with us, but due to the snow, she had to cancel her trip. My boss was coming back from a vacation, and they missed a connection, and then so they ended up having to fly to Indianapolis and then rented a car, but the car broke down outside of Indianapolis, and it was just one of those planes, trains, and automobile stores where you just couldn't get home. My trip to Atlanta was relatively smooth, albeit very expensive. My colleague missed a flight on his way home. He ended up having to fly to Cleveland, where his wife went and picked him up. Right? Travel isn't easy. In the first century, it was even harder. You didn't have to worry about missed flights, but to take any journey required a considerable investment of time and money. You couldn't just pick up and travel on your own. Even if you had the provisions and the resources, thieves would rob you before you went too far. Because of this, you traveled in large groups, but large groups require even more provisions. So it was more expensive because you had to buy all the supplies for the entire caravan. Took a long time for these caravans to travel great distances across empty places. You didn't submit a week's vacation and run to Bethlehem and back. We don't know where the wise men were coming from. It's Persia somewhere. But we know that it would have been a hard, uncomfortable, and costly journey of many months, all to see a child under the age of 2. And why? Why did they make the trip, we ask? And Hebrews 12 explains the predicament well. In verse 1, the preacher of Hebrews is imploring the listener to run with perseverance the race that is set before them, fixing our eyes on Jesus. He goes on to say that Jesus was able to endure the cross because of the joy that was set before him. And then he went on to sit down at the right hand of God. Now, we know that he was sitting at the right hand of God before he came to earth. So it couldn't have been that joy that motivated him to endure the cross. No, the joy set before Christ is you. You are what he had his eyes and his heart focused on. He wanted so badly to be reconciled to you that it gave him such joy that he was willing to endure the suffering and his sacrifice on the cross. The joy that led him to that and through it was you. There was joy enough to justify the suffering. And the same concept is true when we travel. When we travel, we're willing to endure the hardship and the cost because of the joy that set us before us. Whatever is on the other side of that trip sustains us through hardships. When I sat down to buy a plane ticket and book a hotel in downtown Atlanta on New Year's Eve, It was for the joy set before me that I entered my credit card information and clicked buy on an outrageously priced room. The hope of being there to watch the Buckeyes in the Peach Bowl was enough to sustain me through an expensive day. What would you give to talk to the wise men, to know what they saw in the sky? I'd love to know what it was that they witnessed that set such joy and expectation in their hearts to encourage them to embark on a challenging journey, to set out into the wilderness, and then that joy sustained them through that. And not only did they bear a great cost of traveling, but brought these precious gifts as well. How did they hear about the joy of the Messiah? What did they know? And what did they hope for? Friends, we're gathered together for the first time this year. And think of the coming year as a journey that we are going to take together. It's strange to say so soon after Christmas, with the tree still up and decorated at home, but we're headed to Bethlehem. The kids last night at dinner were calculating how long it was until Christmas. How many days, how many weeks? We don't know what's in front of us on this journey that we're going to take, but we know that it won't all be easy. There will be suffering and hardships ahead of us. I wish it wasn't the case, but every year brings us something. So it's my job, and it's our job as a congregation to remember our joy. Every Sunday we gather together to talk about the joy that is set before us. Like a star in the sky, it guides us in our journey. It sustains us through the hardest parts of that journey. In the darkest nights of the year that is to come, if we remember that joy, we can endure like the wise men on their journey, like Christ on the cross. I spent some time between Christmas and New Year's planning for the coming year. I've got some ideas for some sermon series and some other things that I'm excited about. I'm hoping to do a better job communicating those in the Highlander about what's coming in the month to come. My goal each Sunday is to be sure that I clearly communicate the central truth of the gospel so that you know how much you are loved. And hopefully to connect that in some way with your daily life so that as you go out into the world, you'll be reminded throughout the week of the depth of God's love for you and the completeness of God's call on your life. It's Bonhoeffer that wrote, "When Christ calls a man, he bids him to come and die." If we're grasping discipleship as Christ truly calls us to, then there's such joy grafted into the depths of our hearts that we hear that as welcome news. For such is the joy of full union with Christ. Joy isn't solitary, though. Joy is most fully realized in community. Trust me, I felt the Mercedes-Benz Stadium shake around midnight last week. Such was the communal joy of the Georgia fans. The wise men didn't travel alone. They traveled as a group. We don't actually know how many there were. Tradition says there's 3 because there were 3 gifts that were presented, but it's just a guess. Maybe there was a 4th wise man who got written out of the song because he forgot to show up with a gift. It's that question of, at what point are you too far down the road to turn around and go back for it? Maybe he made that calculation and then didn't end up in the stories. We don't know, but clearly they each experienced a joy that brought them together and then kept them together. They helped one another sustain that joy throughout the entire journey and then all the way home. The joy kept them through the hardships. It's been fascinating this week to watch the American community gather around Damar Hamlin. Many of us were watching on Monday Night Football when he collapsed to the ground and we waited helplessly. And it's been with great joy that the most recent updates seem to be that he is on a road to recovery, however long that may be. Football is meant to be a source of joy. People gathered around that, and then there was this incredible sorrow, this hardship. And so the community working together to sustain itself, to help us endure. It was discovered that he had this toy drive in Pittsburgh that he ran, and it had raised a few $1,000s. The goal was $2,500. This was for last year, and I saw it late Monday night, and it had gone from 20,000, so 10 times what it was planning to be. It was all the way up to 70,000, and then it just kept going. And it kept going and kept going as people, the community gathered around, rallied around him. It's, as of last check, it's $8.3 million have been given as the community has gathered around, helping one another endure an incredibly challenging moment. I've seen the way this church, this congregation, gathers around one another, and we help one another endure. There was a great phrase that I love, where I forget where it was from, but talked about how the church one another. We serve, love, one another, and we're at our best when that's what we're doing. And so we're going to keep focusing on that this year. We're on this journey to another Christmas. And along the way, we're going to pass through Lent. We're going to have to endure Good Friday, but we'll have the joy then of Easter will remind us. And the hope is that every Sunday along the journey is this mini Easter that reminds us of the joy that is planted within us, that is grafted into every part of our lives. Like the wise men, we'll be transformed when we worship Christ, as we give our gifts. And every Sunday, it's my prayer that we leave transformed just as the wise men did. A little older, a little wiser. Hopefully able to avoid the Herods that would seek to deceive us, that lay traps for us in the world as we go about our way. May we leave with the knowledge that Christ has come, that we are the joy set before him, and may that give us such joy in our hearts and in our minds that we can endure whatever may come our way as we travel together.